think in a time like this, before I move on and just say something briefly about each honoree before we pray and open this, a quote that has stuck with me from Dr. King, a young man, is, y'all, I grew up hearing, I don't know why he's marching. Every time he marches, it causes trouble. When you're little, when you hear that, you don't know what you go by their truth. But at a fairly young age, I learned the difference. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true. And I could insert the word woman as well. Now, briefly, as we move along, a faithful and loyal and brother in peace, C.T. Vivian, who walked side by side with Dr. King and lived to the age of 95, just passing this past summer. Imagine if we had been blessed to have Dr. King that long before he was cut down in his prime. And Reverend Vivian said, and even as nonviolence forced us to risk our lives for the changes we desired, that risk itself made our lives more worth living. And the Honorable Andrew Young, what an incredible resume of accomplishments. Learning to box as a child in New Orleans from his father during the Depression so he could survive. He became a pastor, a negotiator, a congressman, an ambassador, a mayor, and the president of the National Council of Churches, just to name a few of his accomplishments. An active Christian and a colleague of Dr. King's. Oh, and our sweet, Honorable John Lewis. I told Jim I almost wore a big t-shirt that just said good trouble. And I hope all of you out there know what that means, and if your children don't, please teach them. Politician, statesman, and civil rights activist and leader who served in the United States House of Representatives, Georgia's 5th Congressional District, that are going on right now in our country. He served from 1987 to 2020, 17 terms after being beat on the bridge in Selma. He was the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and a colleague and friend and brother Christian with Dr. King. A Christian who also stood up for the Jewish community. In the wake of the 2014 Overland Park Jewish Community Center shooting, Lewis stated, "It is deeply tragic that such senseless brutality should occur on the eve of Passover, the time when Jews all over the world remember their liberation from slavery in Egypt thousands of years ago." Lewis was called a hero, a mensch, and a special gift to the Jewish community by those who knew and interacted with him. And tonight's keynote speaker, I had to throw in Dr. W. Marvin Dulaney as well with these pioneers. In my life, ladies and gentlemen, I have operated several nonprofit entities. The backbone of those is the volunteer, whether it's a domestic violence shelter or a huge nonprofit like the Red Cross. In addition to being an historian, author, and retired university professor, before being named Deputy Director of the African American Museum of Dallas back in April, he was a volunteer. For more than 2 years, he quietly organized and cataloged the Dallas African American Museum's archive storage room that largely had been unattended for decades because of limited staff to handle such a daunting task. He has been examining and recording shelves and shelves of more than 60 historic collections, including documents and artifacts of prominent local and regional individuals and organizations, businesses, and families. So when he comes up here to address us tonight, I hope you picture him like one of the great scholars, no matter what country or where in history, just plodding away quietly as a volunteer, doing the work so that we can get the truth out there that I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast. Thank you, Dr. Delaney, for your efforts. And Mrs. Serona Clayton Brady, what an angel, the peaceful warrior, the trifecta of perfection and minorities that have been discriminated against, an African American, a Native American, and yes, don't ever forget, a woman. Any person out there that is a woman, no matter what their race, they're double. They're the double whammy, the double doer. They've been cast aside, treated as property throughout history, and not given their due, but they've always risen to the occasion. And most of these men you read about would have folded like a cheap suit if it wasn't for them by their side, I can tell you that. Yep, a media trailblazer who in 1967, think of that, became the first African American in the Southeast to have her own television program. That's big medicine, folks. She's a quarter Cherokee. Being raised in Oklahoma, she has been a tireless champion for the poor, desegregating hospitals, pioneering work to open doors in television. Now imagine this. Just this will give you a glimpse into the heart and the power that this woman has. It's amazing. In 1968, she met Calvin Craig, the Grand Dragon of the Georgia Ku Klux Klan. After many conversations with her regarding race, Craig remarkably decided to leave the KKK, crediting his change of heart to Serona. Now, y'all, I don't need to tell you, it speaks for itself. That's a very special person with a spiritual gift from God and all the heavens to be able to do that. Before I move on and I start to pray, I'm going to throw in a cat real quick that I was lucky enough to see. If you don't know Dave Chappelle, then you've really missed out. He's an American comedian, soul brother number one. I think James Brown wouldn't mind calling him that. But he has the ability, like a jester can, to say things very seriously and to the heart in his social observations in his comedy. He spoke on the monologue on Saturday Night Live just a couple of weeks ago, as he did right after the election in 2016. During his Saturday Night Live monologue, just after the election back in November, when discussing the anguish white people feel in life from wrongs perpetuated, he ended with this. And I hasten all of you to look up that monologue. It was brilliant and hilarious and insightful. Dave said, "Here's the difference between me and you. You guys hate each other for that. And I don't hate anybody. I just hate that feeling. That's what I fight through. That's what I suggest you fight through. You got to find a way to live your life. You've got to find a way to forgive each other. You've got to find a way to find your joy in your existence in spite of that feeling." And lastly, I told Jim I got the okay. I got to give a shout out to one of my brothers who transferred from a Christian to a Muslim. Muhammad Ali has been a hero of mine, and I think at any civil rights pioneer gathering he should be mentioned. Stripped of his title, incarcerated for not going to Vietnam, he went all over this country and spoke truth to power on college campuses, risked being assassinated. When he converted to Islam, then he started taking heat from the Christians as well. So not only was he a great fighter in the ring that could take them all on, he had them coming from all sides in life too, but he never wavered. If everybody in this country could have a scintilla of courage that Muhammad Ali did, we could get through what's going on now. If you'll please bow your heads with me as we pray and open this gathering. Heavenly Mother, Heavenly Father, I ask that as we proceed tonight in honoring these brothers and sisters of ours who stood fearlessly and spoke truth to power and carried the courage, compassion, and love of Jesus in doing so, that you bestow upon us the wisdom to work together and recognize there is more that unites us than what we are told divides us. Lord, please let all of us here be filled with the Spirit of Jesus and of Dr. King and Dr. Delaney and Andrew Young and John Lewis and C.T. Vivian and Mrs. Serona Clayton Brady. And understand that whether you are Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or a Zoroastrianite or a Christian, that being ever mindful of two scriptures in the Bible are really all we need as a society to attempt to act as Jesus and love our brothers and sisters. Both are from the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 12, known as the Golden Rule. So in everything do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. And for those of us here tonight, when you leave, as I share this next scripture and close, I hope you choose to drive down East Lancaster before you go home and think of Matthew 25:40, where the King will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." In Jesus' name, amen. And thank you.
Wow, Mark Lucas Kelly, thank you for that invocation and the occasion. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot just from what he had to say. And to hear him talk about the lady from the Cherokee Nation, which is just in my home state in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that is pretty powerful. Now at this time, we want to have acknowledgments. You know, it takes sponsors to be able to pull this off. And we have one of our trustee members, Mr. Corey Hines, is going to come forth to acknowledge our sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, Corey Hines.
Good evening, everyone. We really appreciate you taking time to join us tonight for this very, very special occasion. And it's my honor to present our sponsors tonight. My name is Corey Hines. I'm a member of the board for the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. And first, I want to mention our presenting sponsor tonight. That's NBC5. They're our presenting sponsor. Next, I want to recognize our platinum sponsor, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas. And our silver sponsor this evening is Trinity Metro. Our bronze sponsors are Tim and Karen Anfin, Tarleton State University. Next, I want to recognize our copper sponsors, Frost Bank, Visit Fort Worth, Linebarger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson LLP. And finally, I want to recognize our media sponsors. Our media sponsors tonight are Jim Austin Online and What's Up Fort Worth. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and we really appreciate you all spending time with us to recognize the great leaders of our country.
Good evening. I am Roy Charles Brooks, County Commissioner for Tarrant County Precinct 1. And I want to thank Jim Austin and Jim Austin Online and the National Western Cultural Heritage Museum for inviting me to attend the Martin Luther King Civil Rights Pioneer Awards program. On behalf of the citizens of Tarrant County, I bring you greetings. In order to set the stage for honoring civil rights pioneers, I believe we should take a moment and reflect on the recent events in our country. Dr. King for whom this event is named, said, and I quote, "Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the true from the false, the real from the unreal, and facts from fiction," unquote. Therefore, for us to pay due respect and homage to these civil rights pioneers, I believe we need to acknowledge their patriotism and sacrifice to this country. There's been a lot of talk recently about patriotism and saving our country. I agree, our country needs patriots. And one might suggest that the soul of our country is in dire need of saving. Dr. King went on to say, to save man from the mess of misinformation, in my view, is one of the chief purposes of education. That again is a quote from Dr. King. Over the last 4 years, and specifically the last 2 months, there has been a lot of misinformation spread that has incited panic and created a false narrative of patriotism. These events and the misinformation that has sparked them compels us to review the true meaning and essence of patriotism. Patriotism is defined as the quality of patriotic, vigorous support of one's country. The presupposition of our current leadership's definition implies that this country only belongs to one segment of its population and leaves out a large swath of its citizens that make up the fabric of this country. That swath being people of color. To correct this misinformed context, you would only need to look at the honorees today. Dr. C.T. Vivian and his work in developing one of the first Nashville sit-ins at a lunch counter. This and subsequent events was one of the catalysts of the civil rights movement. Then there's Representative John Lewis and his work with coordinating the famous March on Washington and organizing the Selma to Montgomery marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Seeing him and the countless others who marched for freedom across that bridge in the face of unbridled racist attacks in what history remembers as Bloody Sunday. His patriotic acts and those of Dr. King and other leaders across the country in the fight for civil rights led to the ultimate passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Similarly, we honor the contributions of Andrew Young, politician, diplomat, and activist, and Zarnona Clayton, civil rights leader and broadcast executive. Civil rights leaders, each and every one. And civil rights leaders in our country's history whose lives compel us to count them as true patriots. Their lives mattered, and so does the blood of every person of color who has resisted oppressive systems in the fight for social justice, equity, and equality. So, my friends, let us pay homage to these civil rights giants, past and present, and pray for the hope of a new generation of leaders who will help us fulfill the aim of the preamble of our Constitution, which states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity." This is the mission of every American patriot, and it is the cause to which those we honor this evening dedicated their lives. Thank you so much for the opportunity to set the predicate for today's program.
Hello, my name is Gloria Reed Austin, and I am the Executive Director and co-founder of the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Civil Rights Program, where we will be recognizing 4 icons in the Civil Rights Movement. These early pioneers are Mrs. Zarnona Clayton, Andrew Young, John Lewis, and Reverend C.T. Vivian. We know that tonight, after you see the videos that will highlight their lives, you understand why they were selected. These individuals worked shoulder to shoulder with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and they have worked tirelessly to make sure that his legacy and dream remain alive. We want to say thank you to our sponsors, museum friends, and everyone who helped to make this evening possible. We hope that it will inspire you and encourage you to continue to work for social justice around the globe. Thank you again for participating with our programs this weekend as we celebrate Reverend Martin Luther King holiday, And we invite you to participate in whatever level that you can support, wherever that you might be, to helping to make our world a better place, where we are all stronger together. Thank you so much. Enjoy the program.
Hi everyone, I'm Giles Clark, a 13-year-old author who wrote this book called Never Give Up. And that's what I want to talk with you today about. I want to talk about 3 simple words. You see it on the screen right here. Never give up. Yes, they're 3 very simple words, but they go a long way. And sometimes you just need somebody to tell you, never give up. And I want to compare this message in one of the chapters of my book, it's not very long, to 2 very significant leaders that we look up to this day, and we still keep in our hearts to this day. And those 2 people are Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. I'm sure you know them. I'm sure you've heard of them at least. And yes, so Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. So I want to read chapter 2 to you, and it's titled, Why Would You? Why would you? And this is what it says. First of all, why would you give up? Is it because it's too hard? It's challenging? It's too big? What you should tell yourself is, I can do this. God will show up for you. He will help you. If you're telling yourself now, I give up, make sure to tell yourself, finish strong. Yes, you have to be strong. Don't let anyone knock you down. Sometimes you have to be a brick wall, a solid person that is unbreakable. Think about it. What's it gonna do for you if you just quit? I hate to break it to you, but nothing. The question is, do you want to succeed? That's the question. Do you want to succeed? In this chapter, I talk about being a brick wall. If somebody were run into a brick wall, they would get hurt because it's solid, right? Well, you have to be that in life. And also, there's 3 things why people give up today. Number 1, because it's hard. A lot of people give up because it's hard. Number 2, it's too challenging. And number 3, it's too big. They see those obstacles. And comparing that to Martin Luther King Jr., he may have made it look easy leading the civil rights movement, but it wasn't. He had to push through trials. He had to push through the battles. He had to push through, and he kept on going. And he came into the race knowing that he could win it. And see, this is a picture of a guy. It's a drawing of a guy crossing the finish line. So you today, your battle or your trial may not be big as leading a movement, but it is something if it's meaningful to you. So you today must keep on pushing forward, because in the prologue of my book I say good things are headed your way, and that's so true. I want you to know, keep it in your heart, the good things are coming your way. And the second person, Miss Rosa Parks, the one that she did not give up her seat, well, right here, a quote that somebody asked her, she said this: no, the only tired I was tired of giving in. I'll say it again. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in. I'm sure somebody asked her, were you tired? Were you just tired? You just didn't want to go back to sleep? No, she said the only tired she was tired of giving in. So she was tired of giving in to the pressure, tired of giving in to that. She did not give up. And a good thing to realize is this: she not only did not give up her seat, she didn't give up her right. I'll say it again. She not only didn't give up her seat, but she didn't give up her right. So you today, you have a right. You don't give in to the pressure. Don't give in. Never give up. You will cross that finish line. Just imagine this. Imagine the finish line waving at you saying, hey, you're going to make it. Come on, you're going to make it. So you're going to make it. Keep on pressing forward. Those are just 2 examples. There's many examples. Barack Obama, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, so many other people that you can look up to who did not give up. So remember to stay encouraged, keep the faith, and most importantly, never give up.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, and let me stand, for Lord, I'm tired, I am weak, and I when my way grows drear, precious Lord, I need you to linger near when my life is almost gone. Father, hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, please, sweet Jesus, don't let me fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, and
Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. I tell you what, I thought I was in church for a moment there. Let's give them all a hand again for a fine job. Really touched by what we heard on this evening, and that's what it's all about, to remember these individuals and what they have done. And now it is time for us to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Dr. W. Marvin Delaney. He is a doctor that is originally from Alliance, Ohio. Now, Mark shared a lot of great things a little early about him. I had the chance to work with him for 5 years at the University of Texas at Arlington. He was there for 14 years. He was the executive director of the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture in Charleston, South Carolina. He's also named in his honor is the W. Marvin Delaney Dallas-Fort Worth branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, a local branch that Dr. Delaney founded himself. He also earned a history doctorate from Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, graduated magna cum laude, and an undergraduate history major at Central State University, which is located in Wilberforce, Ohio. He has served on several boards and edited and written many scholarly reviews and articles. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please help recognize Dr. Marvin Delaney.
Good evening, everyone. All right, and Cedric, thank you for that invitation, that wonderful introduction. Mark, Kelly, thank you for your plaudits. Makes me feel good that that what I've done in Dallas has spread beyond Dallas and here to Fort Worth. And of course, I always want to thank Jim and Gloria Austin for maintaining and keeping the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum afloat and pushing and promoting the study of Western African American history and Western history in general. Let me pat the board on the back too for all the things that they've done to help to keep the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum going. That's very, very important. I'm a historian, and when I taught at the University of Texas at Arlington, most of our classes were 50 minutes. Jim has given me about 20 to this evening. So I'm going to work with that, but I'm going to tell Jim if he comes back into the room, raise your hand if I'm going too long. I'm a historian of the African American experience. I started when I was 17 years old reading books such as Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., What Manner of Man by Lerone Bennett Jr., and just reading a whole host of books about the African American experience. One of the areas that I really like to talk about is the Civil Rights Movement, because it indeed was a very, very important and special movement. Martin Luther King, as we know, from at least 1955 and 56 up until his passing or his assassination in 1968, was a part of that movement. And it's a movement we need to honor, respect, and indeed talk about any opportunity, any chance that we get, because it's, as I said, one of the most important and one of the most significant movements in American history. Let me just point out why the movement is significant and, of course, how Martin Luther King fit into its significance. First of all, it is the longest movement in our nation's history, okay? The longest movement in our nation's history. My subtitle and subtopic for my presentation today is Martin Luther King and the Long Civil Rights Movement. And that's because the movement obviously did not start in 1955 and 56 when Dr. King, of course, became the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott. It had been going on for at least 100 years, or in fact, more than 100 years. And I cite, for example, the abolitionist movement that started in the 1830s, led by people like Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. So the movement, this movement for freedom and justice for African Americans is indeed very, very long, and some would argue it isn't over. The Civil Rights Movement was also our nation's most diverse movement. There were blacks, whites, browns, Asian Americans, Native Americans who participated in the movement. It was not just, as they used to say, a black thing. It indeed encompassed young and old, as I said, people from various backgrounds, rich and poor, trying to change our country and make it more amenable to social and racial justice. And of course, I could cite just a host of people who participated in the movement and who made it the most diverse movement in our history. Take, for example, the founding of one of the most important organizations in the Civil Rights Movement, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. Would you believe that the NAACP was founded in 1909 by about 6 white people? You know, when I tell people that, they laugh at me and say, "Are you kidding me?" But I tell them, though, about people like the grandson of Walt Garrison, who indeed called the first group together in 1909 in New York City to address lynchings, to address race riots, and indeed to address some of the problems that was occurring in this country in regard to race relations. Of course, several months later, they invited people like W.E.B. Du Bois and people like Mark Kelly to be a part of that movement. The movement was also one of the most influential movements in American history. That is, it affected other movements. That is, the women's movement, for example, grew out of the abolitionist movement in the 1840s, and then once again in the 1960s. The movement was both anti-American and also very American. So what do I mean by that? That is, being anti-American and also very, in fact, one of the most American movements. I say anti-American because it relied on love, it relied on nonviolence, it relied on trying to convince people and use moral suasion to change people's hearts about race relations and racism in our country. So that's anti-American, because of our country, as Dr. King pointed out in 1967, is one of the greatest purveyors of violence in the world. So here you have a movement, though, going against this very American idea of violence. In fact, Rap Brown even said that violence in our country, and we see it repeatedly, is as American as apple pie. So here's Dr. King and others in the movement, again, trying to use moral suasion, trying to use love, trying to change people's hearts by trying to bring out the best in them rather than appealing to the worst in them. But at the same time then, being anti-American also made it one of the most American movements in our history. That is indeed using the platform of the First Amendment, using free speech, using the freedom of assembly to march in the streets, to picket and boycott, and indeed use all of the methods that we as Americans believe in rather than violence. Then at the same time, we need to know that the civil rights movement was outgunned, out-propagandized. That is, indeed, the forces of segregation and discrimination had all of the guns, had all of the newspapers. In fact, many of the newspapers today are apologizing because of the way that they covered the civil rights movement. So this movement, this civil rights movement, was very, very significant in our history. It indeed helped to change us. I could give you a litany of its achievements, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1957, the Civil Rights Act of 1960, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 24th Amendment, and just on and on in terms of its achievements. We all know that Dr. King joined the movement in 1955 after Rosa Parks, as we've already learned, refused to give up her seat in Montgomery, Alabama. They boycotted the buses for 381 days to make the point that segregation in public transportation should be illegal. Giving people places on the bus on the basis of their race should have been and indeed became illegal. So Dr. King went on to form the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957, which indeed then organized ministers in the South to fight for racial justice, to fight to end discrimination and segregation in housing, employment, and in all aspects of life. And of course, Dr. King became internationally famous, winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 1963, and indeed becoming a model for not only Americans, but for people around the world. So when we saw the fall of apartheid in South Africa, we saw that they were singing, "We shall overcome." When we saw the fall of communism in Poland with Lech Walesa, we saw them singing, "We shall overcome." We saw them indeed using some of the tactics of the American Civil Rights Movement to challenge the discrimination and the lack of opportunity in those places. So Martin Luther King fits into a long line of peaceful demonstrators, a long line of agitators, a long line of patriotic Americans trying to change our country. And as I said, it sort of begins, as we historians sort of point out, with what we call the long civil rights movement, as I said, dating back to the abolitionist movement, when William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth began the process of fighting against slavery in this country. Now, most people think that the abolitionist movement was this big movement of people, just like they think that the civil rights movement was this big movement of people, when in reality, the abolitionists never numbered more than 200,000 people, yet they were able to bring this country to end slavery by agitation, by picketing, by publishing pamphlets, by riding on what some of them called the Jim Crow car, even in the 1840s and in 1850s, and being motivated, just like many of the workers and participants in the civil rights movement, being motivated by their faith, by love, by believing that all humans were equal and the same, and that slavery in particular was one of the worst institutions in American history, and they brought it about. And so Martin Luther King then became a part of that long tradition of struggle and agitation to change our country. And of course, it continues. When I was younger, most of us used to use this Portuguese sort of phrase, a luta continua. And that, of course, means the struggle continues. And so for us to be here today, honoring these 4 people who participated in the movement is right on time. And so as I close, I say thank you, and I hope that you take to heart a luta continua. Thank you.
That was truly awesome. And 20 minutes is really not enough time to hear what he has to say. Hopefully we'll have to be able to go online and be able to Google Dr. Delaney. Let's give him another hand for what he had to share with us on today. And now we're going to go virtually, and we're going to roll video of our honorees at this time, our pioneers. We'll start off with the late Honorable John Lewis, the Congressman. Then we'll hear from the late Reverend C.T. Vivian, the Honorable Andrew Young, and Madam Lenora Clayton. Let us now be able to watch these pioneers.
Reverend John Robert Lewis was born in Troy, Alabama on February 12, 1940, the third of 10 children to sharecroppers Willie May and Eddie Lewis. As a boy, he aspired to be a preacher, and by 5 years old was preaching to the family's chickens. His first public sermon was at age 15. He graduated from the American Baptist Theological Seminary in Nashville, Tennessee, and became an ordained minister. As part of the Nashville student movement, the sit-ins he organized led to the desegregation of downtown Nashville's lunch counters. His long friendship and association with Dr. Martin Luther King began with a letter Lewis wrote to Dr. King in 1958. In 1961, Lewis became one of the original 13 Freedom Riders. They were regularly assaulted and beaten by angry mobs. Appointed as chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in 1963, he went on to coordinate the 1964 Freedom Summer Campaign to register black voters in Mississippi. The project also set up schools, housing, and community centers. He became nationally known for leading 600 marchers over Alabama's Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965. Again, he was brutally beaten.
On March 7, 1965, I gave a little blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge for the right to vote.
The 54-long-mile march from Selma to Montgomery marked a turning point in America's view of racism. First elected to Congress in 1986, he served a remarkable 17 terms. For his tireless work promoting racial equality, in 2011, President Obama awarded him our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Attending a New Year's Eve party hosted by Zernona Clayton, he met Lillian Miles. They married in 1968 and had one son. She was by his side for 44 years until her death in 2012. Congressman John Lewis died July 17, 2020. America lost a hero, but we will never lose his legacy. Upon the election of President Barack Obama, Lewis commented, "This is not the fulfillment of Dr. King's dream. It's just a down payment." There are still too many people 50 years later that are being left out and left behind. The National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum gratefully honors the Reverend John Robert Lewis. Cordy Tyndall Vivian was born July 30th, 1924 in Howard County, Missouri, and grew up in Macomb, Illinois, where he graduated from Western Illinois University with a degree in education. Working as recreation director in 1947 at the Carver Community Center in Peoria, he led his first sit-in demonstrations, which successfully integrated Peoria's Barton's Cafeteria. In 1960, while studying for the ministry at the American Baptist College in Nashville, Tennessee, he and 4,000 demonstrators marched on City Hall. Vivian challenged Mayor Ben West on racial injustice, which resulted in Mayor West publicly declaring that racial discrimination was morally wrong. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. named him National Director of Affiliates of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
But C.T. Vivian started sit-ins in Peoria, Illinois, way back in 1947. You know, that was years before even Rosa Parks. When you go from 1947 to 2019, that is a lifetime of sacrifice and service.
He developed and launched Vision, later known as Upward Bound, which assisted over 700 Alabama students to attend college on scholarship. As Dean of Divinity at Shaw University, he originated the national program which became his doctoral work, Seminary Without Walls. C.T. Vivian has provided civil rights counsel to Presidents Johnson, Carter, Reagan, Clinton, and Obama, and has lectured and consulted in 44 of the 50 states, as well as 15 different countries. He was the subject of a full-length PBS documentary on his life, The Healing Ministry of the Reverend C.T. Vivian. In 2008, he founded the C.T. Vivian Leadership Institution in Atlanta, Georgia, to train and educate the next generation of grassroots leaders. Married to wife Octavia for 58 years, together they raised 6 children and were grandparents to 6 grandchildren. It's been said of him, he is a spiritual leader, apostle of social justice, strategist of the civil rights movement, and for decades has been in the vanguard of the struggle for racial equality in America. The National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum proudly honors the Reverend C.T. Vivian. Ambassador Andrew Young's humanitarian efforts and influence have spanned the globe. He is a politician, activist, and diplomat. He has dedicated his life to improving the lives of all people. Born in New Orleans in 1932, his mom Daisy was a schoolteacher. Father AJ was a dentist. He attended Howard University and graduated Hartford Seminary with a degree in divinity. The young Reverend Andrew Young served as pastor of several congregations in Alabama and Georgia over the next few years.
All things work together for good for them that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes.
An early leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, he became a top aide to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sadly, Young was with Dr. King when he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968.
The night before he went to Memphis, we talked with Harry Belafonte and John Conyers of Detroit, and Dick Hatcher of Gary, Indiana. And we talked about how do we get the energy of the movement into politics. And that's the same question that Black Lives Matter had.
Young moved to Atlanta, Georgia in 1960. Becoming politically active, he was elected and served in Congress from 1973 to 1977, when then-President Jimmy Carter named him United States Ambassador to the United Nations. Andrew Young was the first African American to hold this position. In 1996, he was awarded the Olympic Order for his tireless work as International Vice Chair of the Centennial Olympic Games in Atlanta. At the urging of Coretta Scott King, Young ran for mayor of Atlanta. He was elected twice. During his 2 terms, Young helped attract 1,100 new businesses to the city, created 1 million new jobs, and brought in $70 billion in investment. His leadership helped Atlanta to earn the world-class reputation it holds today.
I think that's the life of public service, and it also happens to be a life of Christian service. Great is your reward in heaven, I say.
He is the author of 2 books, A Way Out of No Way and An Easy Burden. And he recently won the Emmy Award for Lifetime Achievement from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He and his wife Carolyn continue to call Atlanta home. They have 3 daughters and 1 son. The National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum honors an American legend, Andrew Young. Zernona Clayton Brady is a renowned activist, television personality, CEO, and philanthropist. Born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, she graduated from Tennessee State University. Moving to Atlanta in 1965, she became a parishioner at Dr. Martin Luther King's Ebenezer Baptist Church, thus beginning her long connection with Dr. King.
What he had inside of him, that burning desire to contribute to making this a better world.
She accepted a position with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and worked closely with Dr. King. She also traveled extensively with Coretta Scott King on her many speaking tours. In 1968, her persistent fight against bigotry resulted in the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan denouncing the Klan. He cited Zernona as the reason for his change of heart. Deeply dedicated to promoting racial understanding, in 1966, Zernona coordinated the Doctors' Committee for Implementation, which resulted in the desegregation of all hospital facilities in Atlanta. The program served as a pilot for all 50 states, and Miss Zernona was honored by the National Medical Association for its impact. Beginning her television career in 1967 in Atlanta, the Zernona Clayton Show made her the South's first Black daily primetime talk show host. Subsequently hired by Turner Broadcasting, she became a network executive, acting as national liaison between network news organizations and local and national outreach organizations. Her autobiography, I've Been Marching All the Time, was published in 1991. She's been honored worldwide for her contributions to humanity.
Try to make this a better world, because there's something everybody can do. At all times, there's something each of us can do. All we need to do is find out what fits you best, and then do it.
Following the passing of her first husband, Ed Clayton, who also worked with Dr. King, she married Paul L. Brady, the first African American to be appointed as a federal administrative law judge. She is mother to 2 children, Laura and Paul Jr. She once said, "We're not where we want to be. It might not change tonight. It might not change tomorrow. Tomorrow may be another day, but we're going to keep inspiring. We're going to keep educating. We've got to keep fueling the fire with the burning desire to get better." The National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum honors the keeper of the flame, Madam Zernona Clayton Brady.
Wasn't that awesome on these pioneers? We're now going to get ready to cue up a video in honor and tribute. Before we play it, we have to think about what happened on the first Tuesday of 2021. As we play this song, we have to think about the state of Georgia, how they was able to take a man of God and allow him to be elected as a senator of the state of Georgia. And then we have a Jewish man by the name of John Ossoff who came forth and was elected. God answered our prayers. And we're going to play this song. It's a video tribute of the classic song, and many of you know about Ray Charles singing it. It is entitled Georgia.
Georgia, Georgia,
the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
Georgia on my mind.
I said Georgia,
Georgia, Georgia, a song of you, comes as sweet and clear
as moonlight,
through the pines.
Other arms reach out to me, other eyes
Smile tenderly, still in peaceful dreams. I see the road leads back to you, back to you. Georgia,
oh Georgia,
no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia
on my mind. Other arms
reach out to me,
other eyes smile tenderly, still in peaceful dreams.
I see
The road
leads back to you.
Georgia,
Georgia, no peace I find,
just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. On my mind.
We're singing this song for you.
right there. Georgia on my mind. How about that? Great singing. Well, as we come to a close, once again, I would like to say thank you for sharing and spreading this around the world. It has been an honor to be a part of the 2021 National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. His actual birthday was January the 15th, but it was back in 1986 when it was signed that this would be a holiday that we will remember. So as I take my seat as a national radio host, a 20-year legend for gospel music station Heaven 97 KHBN, and national radio host for the Rejoice Musical Soul Food, I am Cedric Bailey, and I want to turn it over for our closing marks from our founder and president. Would you put your hands together for Mr. Jim Austin?
I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and those that are witnessing this on YouTube. We appreciate you tuning in. As co-founder with my wife, Gloria Reed Austin, we are so proud to be able to recognize these four pioneers. The words that resonated, from the video, from Mark Kelly, the importance of us celebrating at this time. The National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum is so important to my wife and I. A young boy growing up in New Jersey, was born in North Carolina, and within my heart, growing up in New Jersey, I grew up in an all-white community. There were 620 seniors in my class. There were 4 African Americans that attended the school. So when we talked about history, it was very difficult because at that time all we learned about was slavery, not about all the accomplishments that African Americans did. And it wasn't until I turned 45 that I discovered that 30 to 40% of the cowboys were Black, Hispanic, Native American, Asian cowboys, that the Buffalo Soldiers and the cowboys were lawmen and participated in the development of the West. The Buffalo Soldiers protected the Chinese, the Asians, as they built the railroad across the West. So it became a passion of mine to make sure that every person, particularly every child, knows about this history, because it's so important, particularly for our young kids of color, to know that their heritage was so strong and that we were a large part of the development of the West. So as we do this tribute today of our civil rights leaders, it's so important that we at the museum, we continue to celebrate our heroes. And that's what you saw happen tonight, was the fact that we celebrated 4 heroes and many to come, that we stand on their shoulders today. And we got a chance to talk to Mrs. Anona Clayton, who's a very good friend of my wife and I, and we got to meet Andrew Young through Miss Clayton, and then to honor C.T. Vivian, a minister that made things right within our community. And then Senator John Lewis, who we just lost. So I want to thank the many hours that went into putting this together. I want to thank Channel 5. When I called Nada Ruddick and I said, Nada, we want to do this in honor of Dr. King. And she said, Jim, let's do it. So they came in as a presenting title sponsor. If you want to learn more, go on their channel, and they spread the word. And then a friend of mine, Sheena Payne, she brought a relationship to a new sponsor, Blue Cross Blue Shield. I've been paying my Blue Cross Blue Shield for 30 years. So my wife said, maybe we got a little bit back through this sponsorship. But they stepped up and they wanted to let this program thrive. We will do this on an annual basis, recognizing those civil rights leaders. And I want to thank you. I want to give a shout out to my wife, Gloria, that's spent many nights being up, working on this, and just amazing. You heard her on the screen. I want to thank my friend, Dr. Marvin Delaney. Dr. Delaney was on our board. I mean, he is truly a historian that is respected all around the world. When he was on our board, I challenged him to do a curriculum on cowboys of color. He did it, and that course was taught at University of UTA, and he did it, and they taught that class. It was a 13-week class. Now he's on to his next chapter of supporting the Dallas African American Museum. I want to thank my board members that were here today. Mark Kelly, your words were powerful, and thank you for doing that research. He's a historian, and he just moved the dial as far as sharing with us information that some of us did not know. Corey Hines, thanks for coming here with your son and your family and recognizing the corporate sponsors. I want to thank Evan Risher. Evan put all these videos together. Evan worked with Channel 8 for 30 years, retired. And he put this together in the last, 7 days. So all of this was put together in a very professional manner. And I want to thank the young camera men and ladies behind the camera. We're running a 3-camera feed, and we're here at the warehouse on Berry. I want to thank our new manager, Deborah Baylor. She's the general manager of the warehouse. We got a chandelier at the bar. I walked in, I said, man, we like it to Worthington. We got some chandeliers here. And I want to thank my business associate and my friend, Dwayne Washington, for his leadership and putting the program together. We did have a couple of glitches, but y'all didn't know what those glitches were. But it's very professionally done. Dwayne is running for the mayor of Arlington. And, I'm excited about that. He's a phenomenal jazz player and runs a professional team of four of his children are behind the cameras. And then he brought in some new interns within his gentleman's society. So he's making things happen. He's a tremendous sax player and musician. And I just encourage you tomorrow night to tune in to this YouTube channel, Jim Austin Online YouTube, and see David Whiteman performing tomorrow night here on this stage, one of the top performing bands in the Metroplex. And then Sunday night, Smooth Jazz, an evening of jazz with the Faces the Band, Dwayne Washington, and 2 of Dwayne's kids are going to be playing. So if you can't come back and participate, get on YouTube and watch it. We're doing it absolutely free. There's a young lady that's driving in from Houston, Dante Renee, will be performing. She's a world-acclaimed artist that performs over in Europe. And then my man, Bobby Falk, Straight Ahead Jazz. So, come out and support the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. Become a member. It's very important because this is your museum. Gloria and I founded it for the purpose of celebrating the history of the forgotten cowboy. It does not matter what the color of your skin, but just whether you're a good cowboy or good cowgirl. And then also tomorrow we're doing a family fun day, a day of service, where we'll be out at the ranch from 10 until 2 o'clock, horseback riding, rock climbing, archery. We have the Pam Grier Community Garden. So I want to thank my committee of 20 that stood beside me, with me, on putting this program together. I think it was a great program. I think that people from all over the world will watch this. It will forever be on YouTube, so friends of yours that did not get to see it, please do that. And I want to thank my main man, Madison Hogan, here, Catching History. You know, thank you for being here. I think I got everybody. I want to, I thought I thanked Dr. Delaney. Did I not? Doc, thank you. No, I'm sorry, he looked like Doc. You know, they say all people of color look alike. But with these masks, you cannot tell. Cedric Bailey, come up here a minute, sir. Cedric has always been beside Gloria and I. He's won national acclaim of being one of the best DJs in the world. And anytime I call him, he's here. He programs my jazz network, DFW Metroplex Jazz, and I get up every morning and I listen to it. I love jazz. So, Cedric, I want to thank you for always being here with Gloria and I and being a real friend. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah. So you keep it up. I'm going to let you close it out. We had a few more minutes, so I just took the opportunity. Gloria Austin, I want to let the world know that I love you, and I want to thank you for standing beside me and putting so many hours in work. I always tell everybody Gloria was the best kept secret in Fort Worth, and I found her, and I made her mine, so she's my boo, and I want to thank you for all this hard work. And I want to let everybody in here know that my name is not Where's Gloria? It's Jim Austin, okay? So thank you very much, okay?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard from the man himself, Jim Austin, and once you meet Jim, you will never forget him. Remember this, you always see him and you see that cowboy hat. As we get ready to wrap up, I want to say thank you. It's been an honor to be able to be the MC for this wonderful occasion. Like Jim said, it is my prayer that we will be able to share this with our young people. We have so much that we need to talk about as we deal with what's going on in our world. We got people that are dealing with COVID-19. As the new leadership come in, they have a plan. They're taking places like in California at Disneyland and at Dodger Stadium and doing whatever they can. They're going to try to get 7,000 people a day covered with vaccine to deal with COVID-19. It has been really tough. But I always tell my listeners on the radio, we look up and we have people that are dealing with COVID-19. We have to do this. We have to celebrate their life. We're only here for just a matter of time. And each and every day, we have to remember, just like Dr. Martin Luther King did, when he left his home, and I'm pretty sure there were many nights, we think about the little girls down in Alabama, the church bombing, and then what happened in Mississippi and around the world. And we're wondering what our families are saying right now. Can we make it? The answer is yes. We are living in history. And you watch and see what happens, because at Wednesday, January the 20th, we will see history when Vice President-elect, soon-to-be Vice President Kamala Harris, who's a graduate of HBCU, of course, Howard University, will be able to take this country to the next level. Not only will she be able to do it, but we thank God for Joseph Biden, who selected her as his running mate, and pray that our country will come together. I was saying something earlier today when I went to do outreach work. There was a young lady that there was behind the counter, and I was supposed to go to this location to pick up my U-Haul, to pick up some items, because I work with World Vision and the Morning Star Prayer Center, to be a blessing to people and to help them. And I told her, I said, if we could find ourselves at least once a week or once a month doing a random act of kindness, I think this world would be a much better place to live. So let us remember those that are less fortunate. Mark had mentioned a while ago about going down Lancaster. And for those of you that don't know about that area, there are a lot of homeless people that are sleeping there right now, wondering when their next meal is going to be. So if you have a home, you have a place to live, you have a car to drive, you're going to college, and you're able to walk and be in your right mind, consider it a blessing. It is an honor to be able to be your host. And again, be sure to find out more. You can log on to the website at jimaustinonline.com. I always tease Jim because he's a Kappa, and I am a man of black and gold, an Alpha, and we always tease each other because it is an honor to be a part of that. But it's more than being in a fraternity. It's more than being in a sorority. It's all about life and loving people. So remember what I said. I'm Cedric Bailey. Thank you so much, and may God continue to bless you. And happy Martin Luther King holiday weekend.